Hello, everyone. Welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am Cece Shatz. I am the Doyenne of relationship building. You're listening to Going Solo with Cece show. Those of you that don't know me, I welcome you to the show. It is so great to have you. Just to share with you a little bit about our show, we take a lighthearted and candid approach to discussing the journey of relationship loss, divorce, parenting, being single, relationships, dating, and yes, sometimes we talk about sex too, and we have a lot of fun here on the show. We talk a lot about various different topics. We hope that really bring you through to whatever it is that you are having difficulties with. And so tonight we're going to talk about one of those things. We're going to talk about it's not them, it's you. And we have an exciting guest here with us tonight. Let's bring her forward. I'm really thrilled to have her. We have Dominey here with us, and she is a premier in personal and relationship coaching. She has intuitive skills, which is very similar to myself, and she has the approach which is really unlike anyone in the industry. And so she can really tap in on kind of what's going on within you and help bringing you to the other side of what it is that where you want to be. But more importantly, she's also been featured in Forbes and wonderful magazines and ThriveGlobal, and we're just really honored to have you here with us today. So thank you so much, Dominey, for coming with us.
Oh, I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it is great having you. Dominey Drew, you've been in the business for quite some time. You're a personal relationship coach. You're also a podcaster too. Mm-hmm. And you've helped people really travel through a lot of transitions in their life. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you get into this type of field?
Well, I stumbled into it because I started actually when I was quite young. I found this work when I was 19, and I was an unholy mess, to be perfectly honest. I had a mess of insecurities and uncertainty and self-doubt and self-loathing and, the whole story, the voices in my head, the whole thing. And I really needed some help. And I stumbled into a workshop and had this incredible revelation, and I stuck with that modality, with that work for about 4 years. And then I shifted to an energy healing school. I studied that intensively for 4 years. And then I got a master's degree. But really, I just kept, the work peels back layers and shows you how it is that you're creating things that you don't want in your own life. And so it really actually solves just about every problem. I just work in relationships because that's where I like to work, but it has helped me solve so many problems in my life. I mean, I'm 180 degrees from when I started. My insecurities are gone. I'm confident. I'm in love with myself. Even my physical body has changed a lot, or I used to look very different. And my relationship with my family I've completely turned around. My relationships with my partners. And so it's really been an incredible journey. And now I teach this work because it's what I've found that is the most effective. It creates this change in a matter of weeks instead of years and years of therapy. And my sort of goal now is just to get it out to as many people as possible because it's so revolutionary. I just love it.
Yeah, I love it because the thing is so often we are our own stumbling blocks, right? We create a lot of difficulties in our own lives, and we'll blame it on other people, but it really is how we feel and what's happening with us. And that's, I don't want to say that that's okay, but if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. And so I love the idea that you have the intuitive skills where you can really home in on how someone's feeling. You have that empathy that you can be able to do that. Coming from a place of your own, through some of the challenges, through the transitions, you can definitely relate to other people. Yes. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy and the evolution that your life has taken place and how you can help other people they're having these stumbling blocks themselves. What are you seeing in people's lives that you deal with that seems to be the most prevalent in the stumbling blocks that they have? And then how can you move them through that? And I know that's a long thing, so we've got 40 minutes to cover that. So,
dive in.
well, let's just jump right in there, right?
So I tend to work with people in the dating industry, and with their dating lives and their relationship lives in particular. But the work that I actually do doesn't have anything to do with dating, because nobody really has dating problems, right? Dating is incredibly intuitive. You know, you go out with people, you decide if you like them. If you do, you connect, and if you don't, you don't. It's actually quite a simple process, and yet most people don't experience it that way, because all of these personal issues or life issues are coming up and manifesting themselves in their dating life. So one of the things that I work a lot with is actually the fear of rejection. That is an incredibly powerful thing that really messes up not only people's dating lives, but their business lives, right? It'll affect your ability to network, your ability to reach out, to ask for raises, to make friends, to, challenge your family on certain things like that. And so without that fear of rejection, when that is actually fully cleared, your experience of life can be very different. And so, I think a lot of what is kind of remarkable about where I've come to in my life through all this work is really just a place of fearlessness. And I'm just sort of thinking about this sort of as I'm speaking. The fact that I'm not afraid of how someone will react or whether or not people will like me, lends itself to an incredible freedom in my life and my being. I'm just able to be myself, because whether or not I am myself isn't dependent on whether or not somebody else sort of approves. And I cannot even emphasize enough how opposite that is to how it used to be. I was the biggest people pleaser. Like I would never say no. I just this is a great thing, actually. People come to me about boundaries, right? I would never say no. I kind of couldn't do it in the moment. I was petrified of disappointing people. I was so upset. And if you think about what that is, it's really about me drawing someone else's boundaries for them, right? Like if I were sitting here right now thinking, totally would have past, thinking, oh man, I'm talking too much, or what does she think about what I'm saying, or am I doing okay? Are people gonna like this? And all of those thoughts disconnect you from yourself, right? If you think about the sort of shape of that thought right there, it's like I'm leaving myself, overly connecting to you, imagining what I think you're thinking, and adjusting my behavior based on that projection. And to do that, I have to leave myself. I have to leave, in other words, the alternative would be to look inward and be like, do I like what I'm saying? Would I resonate with what I'm, you know what I mean? And in that way, I'm connecting to myself. But when I was always turning it around and being like, what is she thinking? Am I okay? Does she think I'm okay? Right. And so every time that disconnect happens, there's a little abandonment of self. Mm-hmm. And that enhances the disconnect. And, I just had I think a post, or maybe I brought it up on my podcast the other day, about loneliness. People were like, how is it that what actually causes loneliness? Is it actually because some people are alone and thrilled with it, and some people are in relationships and terribly lonely? And the reason that is, right, you've probably heard that before. The reason that is because you're disconnected from yourself. That's when you feel lonely. If you're actually just really resonant and connected, right, then you're just like, oh, I feel so, I love being alone, right? It's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I do feel that we often miss that transition part. I think that as we're moving from a relationship loss of some sort, really trying to find ourselves, and then going into that transition of possibly, if we're not healed within, we can't move forward. And then we have this fear that is so binding to us, right? It just stops us from doing everything. And so, yes. And I do agree with you with that. I totally do. And so it's like, how do we overcome that? And how do we stay connected with ourselves? And maybe that's the key here, that to be able to create that wholeness that we have from within. And I get what you were saying there, because just recently something happened in my life that made me, instead of thinking about how the other person was feeling, I thought about how I was feeling. And just because, that's what I can control is how I feel, right? And so now, granted, maybe the elements around me are creating some of this, but I'm allowing that to happen. And so, clarity and things like that is very, very important. So let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about that. So how can we stay connected to ourselves without losing? And I agree with somewhat with the loneliness, because I do know that as you transition from a relationship loss, when you start getting in touch with yourself, you're not as lonely, right? Because
Yes.
you start finding your joy and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
And that's exactly it right there. I mean, that was it in a nutshell, right? You've lost your relationship, and while you keep focusing on the relationship, which, by the way, is no more, that has broken, it is gone, right? It has morphed into something else. You now have a different relationship with that person, whether it's a divorce or whatever. But that thing that you're missing is no longer there. So a couple of things need to happen. One is you need to admit that to yourself. Because while you keep daydreaming about it and wishing it were there, every moment you spend doing that, you're spending out of reality, right? We all do this. We live in our heads, and the story that we're telling in our heads sounds very convincing. It's very realistic. It's very convincing. And we think that's reality, and it is not in any way, shape, or form. The only reality is in the here and now, in like the physical world. So if you're having, let's say, a wave of emotion, that's something you can feel in your body. That's real in the here and now. But if you're daydreaming, or if you're up in your head, right? And it's not that you can never use your head. It's not that you can't think about the future or the past. It's when you live in the future or the past that you're in delusion, literal, actual delusion. So if you keep reminiscing about it, rather than just take it for the wonderful thing that it is, or that it was, and celebrate that, and then let it go and open yourself up to something new, a couple of things need to happen to do that. One is you need to let it be what it was. The second thing is to let yourself grieve. We tend to get so caught up maybe in the frustration or the anger towards the other person of these type of breakups. There could be a lot of drama. There can be kids involved. There can be pets involved. There are really, there's a lot of cords, energetic cords that go from one person's heart to another. And it's the breaking of those cords that give you that feeling of broken up. You have that feeling when you've like lost, you're just like, oh, something hurts. That feeling is those cords breaking, right? The feeling of falling in love, where you get those rushes and you're just like, oh gosh, this just feels so good. That's those cords being created. So there's a way in which you can just really let those cords kind of go. Let yourself feel the feelings around it. You're probably really upset that this happened. That's okay. That's allowed. Have your feelings. And in so doing, you free up your energy. And see how all of these things that I'm talking about now happen in the here and now. If you have an emotion, let yourself express it, right? Rather than pushing it away because it's not appropriate, or because you don't want to, like, quote, dwell on the negative. That's not what this is. Keeping yourself from dwelling on the negative. I think I have a podcast episode called The Downfalls of Positive Thinking that kind of nips into this around, like, letting yourself, deny what doesn't feel good. It's not dwelling, it's letting it flow through you. Right. And so doing those things really kind of bring you back into the present moment. And then you're just feeling the pain of what happened, as opposed to the suffering of like holding on to it and dwelling and things that make it worse. Right. Yeah, you're so right with that. And the thing is, like, when you're feeling that way, you're totally disconnecting with yourself. Yes. You're just living in this
world that you've kind of made for yourself that's so painful.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. It's not even like a fun world. It's not even like a better world than reality. It's just, it's actually dragging in that terribleness to the present moment. Yes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And so often we have to really step back and step into ourselves and be able to really understand a little bit more, about what's going on with us. And I love that what you're saying in your website, and I'd love to share that with everyone too, because it's very important. She's got some courses on there and things like that might very well help you. It's DomineydRew.com. That's Domineydrew.com. And then of course her podcast is on there too if you guys want to listen to it. But I really like the idea of really taking ownership, of yourself, ownership of your life, ownership of your feelings. And, when something doesn't sit well with you, to speak out about it, because that's what creates that change, that's going to be taking place. So I love that you do that, and you kind of home in on the realities of what's happening within the being, within the person. And so I think that's really, really important. So as we're moving forward in our lives and we have fear, I've always said that I've been asked that so many times, what is the most crippling, thing that can happen to someone? And that is the fear itself, worried about what's happening with your life, what's moving, so fear can just be a block for everyone. So any suggestion of how they can step over that fear to be able to move forward in their lives?
Yes. Two sides to this coin, or two steps to that procedure. The first would be when you're in the moment, and it's got two halves to it. The first is to just recognize what is happening. In other words, recognize it as a wave of fear, not as, this is truth, or this is, I don't want to say it's not reality, because you're feeling the fear is real. But let's say the fear is saying, oh my God, I'm never going to find anyone again. Right? And that brings up this huge wave of fear. Great. Feel the fear. That's something that you're afraid of in your life. Cool. Face that. Again, as you said, stepping into it, right? Embodying it, owning it. And so there is that recognizing what it is, and then just let yourself feel it. It's a wave. Emotions go in a wave structure. So they come in, they get as strong as they're going to get, sometimes quite intense, and then they go away on their own. Unless you either stop them and say no to that feeling. Nope, I'm not going to feel scared. Now you're denying reality. You're saying no to, you're arguing with reality, right? The other thing way you can block emotions is by holding on to them. That's the dwelling. Right. That's like if somebody has died and it's been 2 years and you're still broken up about it, or a year and you're still like super broke. It's like, then you're not letting the grieving process happen. You have to let it flow through you. And that can be scary because they're big waves of emotion, but they're just feelings. They can't actually hurt you. It sounds like such a silly thing to say, but it's actually really true, right? It's just uncomfortable. That's the worst it's going to get, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really, those steps are really important, first of all, to just let it happen. And then once that wave goes through, let it go. Let that wave go and just ask yourself a question. What would feel really joyful right now? What sounds like fun? And in turning and doing something that sounds fun, then you're shifting your experience of reality. You're not holding on to, or you're not sort of depleted from that thing of that wave of emotion. It was just a wave of emotion. Mm-hmm. Fear is just a feeling. It's the fear of the fear that keeps us stuck, right? So if you're like, oh God, nobody's ever gonna love me again, you can either take that as truth, which is not, it's just a thought you had. You have no idea or any way of knowing whether or not anybody will ever love you again. That is out of your capacity to know. You can pretend to know, but I would just recommend just letting it go, because that is in the future and nobody can tell you. So like, don't worry about it, right? But the fear, the still panic, but what if nobody does? Now there's a piece in you that's triggered, right? You're scared. Okay, great. I, Dominey, am having a wave of fear that I won't ever be loved again has a very different experience in your body than, oh my God, nobody's ever going to love me ever again. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. One, you're taking it as reality. You're like, yep, that is truth. And given that that is truth, I am then scared. The other thing is just being like, oh my gosh, I'm having this wave of fear that this thing is going to happen. Ooh, that was scary. Okay. What do I like to have for lunch? You see what I mean? And it just sort of brings the whole like, oh my God, life is going to be this big scary thing, none of which is yours to know. You cannot prove that in any way, shape, or form. To, wow, I had an intense wave. And so it just brings it down to a manageable thing. And if you keep doing that, then eventually the fear won't come up anymore at all.
Yeah, it's really great advice. It reminds me of when, my kids were little and they would do, something would happen to them, right? And you could see it on their face that they're scared or they got hurt or whatever. And there's like this shock. Mm-hmm. And then I would clap and yay, like it's a really great thing happening. Next thing you know, they're clapping and they're having a great time.
Good for you. I'm so glad that you do that. I'm so glad that you do that. Somebody told me that about kids, and I don't have children myself, but I do that now every time a little kid is near me. Like, they run by me on the playground and they fall. And my first thing is, wow, that was a great fall. Good for you. That was good. And they sort of look and they're uncertain. Who's this lady? They're like, yeah, that was a pretty good fall. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go. Yeah. Off they go. Right. But it just changes that experience of it in their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we can do that as we continue in our lives. It's like when something happens to us like that, rather than, think it's the end of the world, we can say, hey, wait a minute. Okay. Number one, what did I learn from this? So we don't do the same thing again. Mm-hmm. And then the other is, let's move on from it. Let's move past it and get beyond it. So we're going to talk more about that when we come back from our commercial. We've already had half the show go by, and it's gone by very quickly, and you're a delight to have. And so thank you so much for being on the show here with us. I so appreciate it. But when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about, our subject. It's not them, it's you. And see if we can help those that might be a little bit apprehensive about maybe developing a new relationship as they're moving forward in their lives. And so, maybe they're getting through that transition of dating. They're starting to trying to come to their own on developing a relationship. And so let's talk a little bit about that and how we can kind of help move them through that. So when we get back, okay? All right, everyone, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am Cece Shatz, the Doyenne of Relationship Building. You're listening to the Going Solo with Cece show, and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back. This is Cece Shatz. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are the #1 internet singles talk network, and we're really proud of that. We have an exciting guest here with us tonight. We have Dominey Drew. Dominey Drew is a personal and relationship coach, and she's also a podcaster. She really specializes in helping people move through a situation that they might be participating in, and that's why we're talking about it's not them, it's you. So she really helps those travel through some of those blockages that we tend to have in our lives. And thank you for sticking with us here, Dominey. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, the first part of the show was really awesome because we talked about fear, which is that 4-letter word that, just gets in our way all the time about many different things that happen in our lives. And I love the idea that you have intuitive skills so you can really kind of home in on what the situation might very well be. And because sometimes we ourselves don't always understand all the elements that are in play with regards to what is happening in our lives. But what we're going to talk about now, we're going to talk about that transition that we have, that transition that we're moving forward. We've gotten through the relationship loss. We've decided we want to start building a relationship. We're a little bit homed in on connecting with ourselves, even though we have that triggers that go back and forth, that we kind of step it forward and step backwards a little bit. But let's move forward into creating a new relationship. Now, what we want, Dominey, is not a relationship like we had in the past, because obviously it didn't work, right? So what advice can you give those that are stepping forward and that want something new in their lives? How can they start mentally getting their heads around establishing something new that they want in their lives?
Yeah, I think a good place to start here would be to explain the title of this episode, which probably sounds, quite rude to a lot of people, but it was really quite intentional because, I've done this work for almost 20 years, and there's quite a bit of magic in it, in the sense that there's a lot that works every time, but I couldn't tell you how it works. And one of the elements that's kind of like that is what I was thinking of when I suggested the title of this show. It's not them, it's you. You sort of think, why is this my fault? Like I messed up my relationship. What was the deal there? It's because every dynamic between two people takes two people, right? It takes two people to participate. The incredible thing about this work is that when you do your own work, when you fix whatever it is that's going on inside you, the other person then shifts as well. And I've seen this over these past 20 years, countless times. If, there are troubles in a marriage, and you work with only one person, it ends up adjusting the entire relationship, even if you've never spoken to the other person. The reason why that works is, again, because there's every dynamic takes two people, even painful dynamics, even abusive dynamics, right? Which is, a taboo thing, but it takes two people to stay in an abusive relationship, right? Right? One person takes a perpetrator and takes a victim, and both have to choose to stay. So even if we choose a less dramatic example, let's say you always argue with your mother, right? You take this side and she takes this side, and it's always going at it. If you go inward and work out whatever it is that's getting triggered in you in that dynamic, then the next time you show up on the call, you show up differently. And that shifts the entire dynamic because you're not playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's no, you have to play into her whatever she does in order for her to do it. If you don't play her dynamic, whatever that is, and it can, it's partly distorted from her and partly distorted from you. That's just part of the dynamic. But when that happens, the whole thing collapses. So what I say what I mean when I say is it's not them, it's you, is sort of like a kind of a cute way of saying that, like, everything that you're experiencing, including repeating negative relationship patterns, which is where I specialize with people, is people who keep attracting the same relationship over and over again, it can all be solved within you. And that ought to make you very, very happy. If that's making you very upset and you're like, oh, what do you mean? It's my fault? You're taking it the incorrect way. That's the best news I could give you. That's the best news you've heard all day and possibly for your entire life. Because what that means is you can solve every single problem in your life. Right,
because then you're taking ownership of it, right? You're then controlling that. So when you understand, it's like, if you want to step forward into a new relationship, you have to really be centered on yourself to understand the part you played in the demise of that relationship.
Exactly.
So that's why I thought that as we move forward in our lives and we decide we want a new relationship, we really need to be more centered into what our feelings are, what it is that we truly want, what do we don't want,
right?
Understanding how our emotions are and how we're feeling, those type of things.
Yeah, and in doing so, you shift because usually when you're looking for a new relationship, you're looking outward. Well, I had a guy with these 10 things, and that's what I don't want anymore, and so now I want somebody with 10 new things. That's not actually what went wrong in your last relationship. It's not. Whatever you think went wrong in your last relationship is probably like partially correct, but mostly not what went wrong. Fact of the matter is, you chose him. You chose someone who didn't work out. Why? What was it about that person, that man, that woman, that attracted you, even though it ended up not being the one that gave you the relationship that was the length that you wanted? Right? Because it might still have been a very rich and beautiful relationship, but maybe you wanted one that lasted for the rest of your life, and this wasn't that. So you walked into something that wasn't what you wanted, and you thought that it was what you wanted. So the whole thing, when we talk about owning and empowerment and stepping into your power here, and this is an incredibly important thing, and it can be done in one single step. Okay? You can look at your past relationships, and let's say you're female and you've married men and you're straight, and you can go through and you can say, you know what, all the guys I've dated have, don't seem to want to commit. Men just don't seem to want to commit anymore. In that statement, you are, first of all, projecting onto all men. And as someone who is focused on, for the last several years, on single men and helping them attract the relationship they want, I can tell you there are a lot of single men out there that are dying to commit. The real question is, why aren't you attracting them? Why aren't they the ones that you want? So if you look at your past relationship life and you go, man, there's just something wrong with men, then you're automatically a victim, because you can't fix men. You can't fix what you've decided is wrong with all men, right? Same thing with women. Man, women just, seem to cheat because every single woman you've been in a relationship with cheats. Okay, not all women cheat, but you seem to draw the cheaters. Interesting. Why is that? So this whole thing can be shifted in one change, and that is changing it from, men must just blank, or women always seem to blank, or you're a victim, to, I seem to attract women who are untrustworthy, or I seem to attract men who don't want to commit. I wonder what that's about. Now you're empowered. Now there's something you've attracted multiple times, and you're wondering why you may have done that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so that's a totally different conversation to, I'm a victim of, men just seem to be this way, or women just seem to be this way, to, I seem to attract this kind of thing. I wonder why. And in that one step, it shifts you from victimhood to empowerment. And it allows you to actually take responsibility, and then you can change it. And so when I say that's the best news that you've heard all day, it's because now, and you look at it from that perspective, it's not about fault. It's about intentionality. Right. Are you strong enough to step into your own creating, to own, as you say, your own creating? You know, I seem to attract cheaters. Part of me seems to want that. I wonder what that's about. Great. Now there's a place we can work.
No, that's very good advice, and it's very enlightening, because I do feel that so often we kind of get what we're projecting, right? And so if we're projecting that, those are the kind of people that come into our lives. And so if we create that shift from within, we're creating a whole different path for us, a whole different projection.
Yes.
And yeah, totally on it. I think that's true.
And of course, most of the problem is it was just unconscious. You know, you don't know that you're what you're projecting. That's the work that I do, and probably similar to what you do as well, is I connect people with their subconscious. You know, great, let's find the part of you that wants to date a cheater, because clearly more of you wants to date cheaters than doesn't, because every relationship seems to cheat. So that's great. Now we have information. Something about me likes this thing, even though consciously I really don't like this thing because it's very painful and awful and, you know, whatever. And so just with that one shift, all of a sudden it's a manageable thing.
Well, and the other thing too is I hear a lot from men that talk about, you know, well, they start dating and then the woman wants to change them. And so here's the thing is you're projecting, you know, maybe your past onto them, expecting them to be different than they are. And so, yeah, I totally get it. I think it's really this awareness of oneself is truly a vital step that I think a lot of people are missing in that transition. And so, you know, when you heal from your past or from your past relationships, you really need to take that time to make that transition, to make that shift in your life. If not, you're going to just keep going down the same path. And so let's talk a little bit about, on your website, you've got some courses. And I'd like to share that with the audience, because you do have a free course there.
Yes, I do.
So I wanted to be able to share that with them so that they would be a little bit more enlightened on the steps that they could take to create this shift in their lives.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. I created, it's been a very important part of my process to really distill all of this really quite cosmic reality and realizations down into really bite-sized and accomplishable pieces, because nobody really needs more information for the most part. Sometimes that happens, but often not, because like the steps to enlightenment, like how to reach enlightenment, is on the internet. How to make $1 million in a year is on the internet. And if you do those things, you will achieve both those things. Like, they're not secrets. I don't think there's very many secrets anymore, for better or worse. Here we are, all the knowledge is shared. But really, I mean, there are probably 1 million places where you could reach the actual steps to enlightenment, and they will actually get you to enlightenment. The lack of information is not the problem. The problem is actually integrating it.
Yes.
So if I take one of those steps to enlightenment and work with you on it for a couple of weeks, your life is going to shift more than if you read the entire Here's How to Reach Enlightenment book and didn't do anything. So this is really, I think what sets my work a little bit apart is that it's incredibly embodied. And it has to be, because if you want to make actual life change, not conceptual life change, not changing, not learning something new or me telling you to do something. This is about feeling yourself, doing the inner work, that self-mastery element, where you are conscious of what's going on in your body, you're aware of how it relates, you're aware of how you're creating what you're getting in life. And once you start making those connections, and in my work that happens really quite quickly, within about a week or two, you start making these connections and suddenly the whole game flips around. And so in that free course, that Inner Evolution, it's really just a way to introduce people to, the way I work and how that, how it gets integrated into your system. And I have some podcast episodes to watch about, or to listen to about different personality characteristics, called characterologies, of ways that you run your energy and ways that, how you create and things like that. And so it's just a good sort of intro to people to really help to start to get to know yourself.
I love it. I love all that you're saying. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show here with us, because this is a very positive show. And it's one that those that are listening can really resonate with and decide if if they need to have a shift in their lives, if they need to step forward into a different direction and they take ownership of their own of their own life and be able to move through and be happy. And so I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. Now, we're about ready to wrap up, so I just want to make sure everyone has your website. It's Dominey, it's Dominey, and her last name is Drew, DREW.com, and her podcasts are right there on the site. Her courses are on there, and like I said, there's a free course, so you can try it out and see if you connect, because it's really all about connection with you, connecting with ourselves, and and then take it forward. You've got a couple other really good courses on there too that I thought were very, very great. Listen to her podcast. I just can't say enough about all the various different podcasts we have all around with all the wonderful guests that we have with us, and then also all of the wonderful hosts that we have here on the WGSN. So thank you again. Are there any last words you'd like to share with our audience here tonight?
Well, I had a thought just as you were speaking, after speaking about the free course, that it really depends how you would like to approach what you want to do. I have a program on just dating, on why you're single and you don't want to be anymore, or why it is that, again, the negative relationship patterns, why you keep attracting the same experience over and over again. So it can come from an attraction and dating standpoint. But I also have another one called The Art of Authenticity, which is literally about how to be yourself in a fearless and authentic way. And so it really just depends how it is that you want to approach, the next step in your life. And this is all just always about being yourself and radiating that self from the inside out. That's really where it's at.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I hope people will take advantage of it, because I think it will definitely create a shift in their lives and be able to be more in touch with whom they are and be able to step forward and live a very happy life. And so that's
100%.
That's what it's all about. We want everyone to live their best life, and that's what's important to us. So again, the show here today was It's Not Them, It's You, with our wonderful guest, Dominey Drew. She's a personal relationship coach, and she's got a wonderful podcast. Her website, again, is her name. It's Dominey, Dominey, Drew, DREW.com. And so if you guys would please check out her website and check out her podcasts that are on there. And the reason why I spell this, I had someone ask me, why do you always spell everything? Because we dropped this down into our WGSN-DB live streaming radio station, and they don't see it. So we have to spell everything, say everything so they can hear it. So again, her website is DOMINEYDREW.com. So please check it out. Check out her podcast. We hope that will help you be able to shift your life and create the life that you want. So we appreciate it. We appreciate you. We want to thank you for your time. It's just been wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you so much again.
Gosh, the time goes by so quickly, doesn't it? I tell you. It's amazing. You guys are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are the #1 internet singles talk network. We've got lots of shows that are going to be following mine. If you'd like to contact me, I'd love to hear from you. My website is goingsolonetwork.com. Everything we do is on that website. Our email is goingsolonetwork@gmail.com. You can contact me that way. I hope that you guys will join us on our brand new website. We've got one out. It's called Going Solo Community. And what it is a singles community where you can kind of tap into a lot of wonderful coaches that are on there, but also connect with wonderful singles in a very kind of an easy format. So we have groups, we have a forum, we have all kinds of things so that you guys can be able to really connect with singles all around, hopefully around the world. We'd love that. So it's called goingsolocommunity.com. I hope you'll join me there on our brand new website. We've got a few other tricks up our sleeve with some other things that we're going to be doing coming up this year. So we're kind of excited about where we're transitioning. And so again, Dominey Drew, she was a wonderful guest. She really, truly honed in on where we want to be, right? Where that shift that we want to take place in our lives, the control that we want to be able to really be free in our own environment, to be able to embrace life as we choose. And so you guys, I hope you'll check out her website, her podcast. I hope you'll connect with her, and I hope you'll keep connecting with us here. Our website is goingsolomedia.com, has all our radio information on there, all our TV broadcasts on there. But stick around, because we have a wonderful show right up behind me. We have our Going Solo veterans, and we can't honor them more. So please stick around, listen to that show, and honor our veterans that we want so much to be able to be respectful for. Again, our website, goingsolomedia.com. You can find all us on Facebook, YouTube, and I love you. Thank you. I am Cece Shatz, the Doyenne of Relationship Building. You're listening to Going Solo with Cece on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. Bye for now. I'll catch you next week.